Hello and welcome to Audio Gyan, an Indian podcast for those interested in design, philosophy, and arts. Audio Gyan documents thoughts, ideas, and insights from known and unknown gems of India who have done some remarkable work in their field of interest. Visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Today, for the first time on Audio Gyan, I am having two guests together, Kunal, Anand, and Arjun Charanjiva, co-founders of Culture Shop. I was able to interview artists commissioned with Culture Shop through them. So thanks Arjun and Kunal, and welcome to the show, and thanks for giving us your time.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Cool. So I'll quickly introduce you guys. Kunal is a creative director and co-founder of Culture Shop, born and raised in Zimbabwe. He was at the spearhead of dynamic and flourishing Indian graphic art scene. He is an accomplished entrepreneur as well as an award-winning creative director, art director, curator, and a graphic artist. With over 15 years of experience, his interest lies at the intersection of art, design, and culture. Arjun is Arjun is actually the founder of Culture Shop. His mainly background is FMCG, has done several roles in marketing in the US. He came back to India in 2007. He left his corporate world to support art since 2010, and then he founded Culture Shop and is now working towards supporting and promoting overall art in Indian space. So once again, welcome. And we'll be talking about two things primarily. One is about Culture Shop and overall the Indian art scene, what's happening. So the first thing is, can we set the background by you guys telling me what is Culture Shop and how did it happen? Arjun, maybe you?
Yeah. Culture Shop today is a platform for the most talented Indian graphic artists. Mm-hmm. It is really set up for them to have their work seen, appreciated, monetized. We sell this artwork on art prints, mm-hmm. and a range of lifestyle products. And in addition to the core business that I've just described, we are also driving a design community, art and design community, and also have just actually started a art and design services, mm-hmm. Segment of the business. Our main products we sell through retail shops. Mm-hmm. We've just launched an art concept store in Kalagoda, as well as a website that ships globally. Mm-hmm. A bit of the background to how this all came together. I've had many roles in marketing. I grew up in Bombay, spent a lot of time in New York. I was always around communication, the graphic image. Had a dream at one time to set up a t-shirt design company. When I was in Hyderabad working with Mars, my wife, who was a aspiring artist, was trying to monetize her work on products and was having a difficult time. I felt that, the only way it would break through in society was if we got a bunch of talented people together and shone a light on them, and really see what comes out of that. As we were preparing to set up the business and launch, actually Jazz met Kunal and brought him home, and he'd come to discuss some stuff with her, but he ended up in my room and we ended up talking about this business idea for a very, very long time, for 4 or 5 hours. And it was nice I was really looking for somebody who was interested in something of a collective coming out of India, and also interested in where Indian visual identity could go.
Okay.
Kunal had a very unique experience. He'd grown up in Zimbabwe, but had spent a lot of time in London and was an integral part of the British Asian underground music scene. Was sort of the graphic designer for there, and had already had experience with a clash of cultures. So I found somebody who was interested in the depth of what I was trying to pursue, and was, unlike a lot of the people I was meeting, was actually interested in the larger whole and what the larger whole could do.
Okay.
So we joined forces, and Jazz, my wife, who's I mentioned is an artist also, was actually having some success in connecting her work to the public in the social media space. So we felt it was a good combination, me with my business background and my desire to support the arts. Kunal had a sort of an immaculate graphic design background, and Jazz was, had really figured out how to connect things to consumers. And
but right now this consumption was happening through social media only.
Yes, but I think the appreciation of the work was really building.
Okay.
And, as we were discussing in the car on the way here, people are different. And some of the artists are very introverted. And it's important to be able to present your work in the public sphere, hitting the right tone.
Correct.
Yeah, but I'd even add that I guess before Culture Shop, it was artists for artists. Artists following artists, interested in their work and so on. But it was extremely closed circuit. And I think if artists are only talking to artists, then we don't have the opportunity to progress. We really need to be talking to the public. And everybody else should be part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we sort of, this is what we are today, and I think in the last 3 years we've really understood a lot about the space, and are tremendously excited about the future. So our vision is really to lead, shape and promote globally a new Indian art genre which is based on graphic art, which is essentially what we specialize in. In terms of our beliefs, we have a lot of respect for fine art, which we all have grown up looking at.
Correct.
But I think this is more of a generational thing. At the end of the day, my generation, your generation, Kunal's generation, and the younger generations have grown up with very different inspirations. We've been inspired by comic books. We've been inspired by cartoons. In India, we've been inspired by Mario Miranda, Mulads, R.K. Lakshman, political, social commentary. A lot of advertising and communication. And so if you look at the younger generations, their view of creativity and art is slightly different. And it has not really been serviced. It's not really been satisfied.
Also channelized to a certain extent.
There's no structure around it at all. So this is all very new in terms of a market. But we really believe that art cannot only be the domain of the rich and the famous and wine and cheese parties and enormously high-priced works of art. We believe that should be democratized, that art should really be democratized, and graphic art gives us the opportunity to do that because it's affordable. And today art is not only on a canvas, it's also on other forms of expression. So, our beliefs are really that we want to change the way people discover and buy art.
Well, nice.
And the last thing I'd say here is that art has been a bit of a nebulous and difficult concept for many people. Quite a few people are intimidated by it. And what we would like to do, just touching a little bit on what Kunal was saying earlier, is to take this out of this whole circular artist to designer, designer to designer, artist to artist conversation, and present a kind of a relatable art that can be experienced and enjoyed by many, many, many more people. We are actively looking and studying the way consumers view what we create, and we are really elevating our understanding of how to engage them in easier, simpler and more fun ways with the concept of art.
Oh, nice. So I understand this is like more towards graphic side and stuff like that. So what's the need of a physical store? Because you have in Bandra and now you have recently opened in Kalagoda. You already have an online presence. So what's the need for a physical store when it comes to distribution at in this time?
It's a great question. I think the answer has to do a little bit with India and a little bit with the world. I think in general, this kind of art and affordable art has not really existed. It's perhaps emerged much more strongly in the past 10 to 20 years in Europe and the US. but it requires the development of a category. Today, you can't really mention an affordable art brand, can you?
No, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Culture
there is, yeah. So that, you know, if you are a consumer and you're looking to get something for your wall or for your desk, you don't really have a place to go. So I would say that this is a lot of development of the entire market is what is required. It's a very primary job that we are doing. All the work that we are doing and other people who are also in this area is very primary, and will sort of, the benefits of which will be seen many years later. In that context, to be able to physically experience something is hugely important. And we started off with a little shop in our studio in Bandra West, opposite Mehboob Studio, as well as a website. But the kind of traction that we saw in the physical space was actually superior.
Okay.
So it's also a great learning lab for us in terms of how people are viewing what we're creating, and the ability to understand, engage with it. And so not only from a revenue standpoint today, but also definitely from an understanding of the art category as we're developing the whole thing, it's a critical thing. Over time, we believe that online is definitely the place to be. So we built that foundation now. Simply because it gives access to, a level of people that you cannot possibly even imagine with physical stores. So in our growth path, we really see these stores being the anchor for our concept. It's also a place where artists can exhibit their work to real people in a real environment. And is also a fantastic place for us to build the design community.
Okay.
So that person, in an age where people are spending enormous amounts of time at home or stuck on their devices, that physical contact and that communication is irreplaceable in an interactive physical setting.
Correct. Also, people get to really touch and feel the products.
Definitely.
And I think today there is online where you can buy pretty much anything, but people still like that experience of going to a shop and purchasing something. And as Arjun was saying, this is a new type of art, and sometimes you want to have a conversation about it before you purchase it and expand your mind. So the experience of buying the work within an environment that's been made for those conversations to happen is partly why the physical store is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. I would like to just slightly dig into some of the slightly trivial stuff, but what's the most hot selling product in the Culture Shop lineup, and also who's the sought after artist?
I'll talk a little about the products, and then Kunal can talk about the artists. So the nice thing here is that art is actually our best selling product.
Okay.
Which is a hugely positive sign for us, because it's kind of our guiding light as a business. It's always art first. In fact, as we look at it, we kind of look at the life cycle of a consumer with our range of. So I just want to back up a little bit. I would say graphic art is typography, pattern making, graphic design, illustration, mixed media. So that's the kind of work that we're talking about. And sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Just remind me what was your question?
So, what's the hot selling product?
So, art is always the mother for us, if you will, and the rest of the products are the children. The way we look at it is, people tend to buy art once they get to 30.
Okay.
So, products like notebooks, t-shirts, phone cases are things that even an 18 to 25-year-old can pick up. You rent a home, you get a house. What do? You gotta get a cushion cover for the sofa, you gotta get a bed cover, you gotta get a rug, all this kind of stuff, right?
Correct.
So it's only once people really get into their 30s that they buy art.
Is it because of the maturity levels or the spending power?
I think it's a function of both.
Okay.
And funnily enough, it's also a function of, can you drill a hole into your wall? Because you're renting a house and your landlord may not want you to do that.
Correct.
So it's very encouraging. We have a slightly older consumer who's seen a bit of the world. And art is number one. T-shirts has been number two for us. It's kind of become a new canvas for art.
Okay.
One of the newer products we're sort of interested in tracking is phone cases. You now have people buying 5, 6, 10 phone cases, depending on where they're going. They go to work, they have one phone case. They go out, they have another phone case. But I would say art, T-shirts and phone cases next level, and home is a very interesting category for us. We've just launched some new products, so we're kind of interested to see where these categories settle.
And in terms of artists?
Some hot items was your question. I guess there's always a flow coming in. It's never that the work stops at some stage. Every day there's work coming in, and it's exciting for us to see. A few items that have done really well is Shruti Venkaraman's Bombay Wali series. And she's got a new series coming out called 7 Yards of Style based on the sari. So look out for that. Jazz Charanjiva's Don't Mess With Me has been globally recognized and has become a champion for women's rights. Sajid, it's dope. We love that piece of work because it kind of mixes this Devanagari font with urban culture word, and we've never seen that done before. So it's almost a new Indian pop culture being expressed. Jyoti Patra is doing some beautiful, intricate typography series coming up as well. Pavan Rajurkar is a phenomenal artist who comes from an animation background, developing characters and now moving into more of a graphic design state. So look out for his work. And then Kunal Gore is also producing beautiful range of work. So yeah, there's a constant flow. So just keep checking the site every month, and you'll find something.
And what about Kunal's work? I would ask.
So I have to. He's never going to talk about himself. And I indicated the modesty earlier. So and that desire to really push the whole forward. Kunal is an exceptional artist. His work is always very insightful. Very witty, very intelligent, and sometimes even a little dark. But it's been fascinating to get into the DNA of all these artists, because artists are artists, and part of what we want to do is to celebrate each individual for who they are and what drives them, and to create the kind of art that they do.
We're constantly trying to find out what makes them tick, because then you kind of get a look into what they want to make, and that's part of the discovery of working with artists daily.
I got a sense of the kind of responsibility you guys have in terms of like promoting these artists and maintaining a lot of things, which we'll obviously come down later to. So in the first part, like I would like to just conclude.
Just one other thing. I think that what has happened, and Kunal can probably add to what I'm saying, is that when we first started this, we could barely find like 12 people who met the standard. What has happened in the last couple of 2-3 years literally has been an explosion. And if you take a step back and you look at it, there are a lot of factors that are enabling that, and digital trends are hugely important to our business. Artists are able to absorb perspective, gain perspective much faster. Never existed before. They are able to actually create work much faster. Starts off analog in most cases, but then it gets digitized, and the digital medium essentially enables people to produce very high quality stuff very fast. And then of course technology is hugely useful in connecting the consumer as well, but it's an urban phenomenon, and you basically need sketchbook or some cracked software, hopefully not cracked, hopefully legal, to create this. So if you really look at the population of India, the barriers to a flood of talent coming through are actually not that high.
Okay.
And so we're only scratching the surface today. This is going to be absolutely explosive going forward. Kunal, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, and how does that operational part also work in, which we were discussing earlier about?
Operationally,
I can go to the operation. You want to add?
So with work sitting in sketchbooks, we just couldn't let it be. With so much talent and it not being seen was something that we wanted to create Culture Shop for that purpose, to give artists a chance to give themselves the opportunity to earn and be self-sufficient. And since we created Culture Shop, a few of our artists have left their full-time agency jobs and gone independent, and that's really changed the body of work that they put out now, because it's in their own voice as opposed to being fine-tuned or changed by the artist, art director or the client and so on. So giving them that freedom to make their own work that they believe in.
Yeah, that's really nice.
It is. I mean, I remember Abiral's comment when he tapped his finger on the floor and said, "This is." When we set up Culture Shop, and he actually got an opportunity to create this kind of work rather than the client work that they make most of their money on. He said, "I feel this is what I was put on earth to do." So it's very rewarding for us to see them being able to express their true artist side rather than just cater to clients. It's a lot of back and forth and things like that.
Cool. I think you guys pretty much mentioned what Culture Shop is doing, but just to conclude with one last, how is Culture Shop influencing the society as well? Because this is great work towards artists and promoting art in general, but how is Culture Shop being able to make the society also sensitive about art in a certain way?
I'll add to.
I think since we launched with the curation of our first themes, we set a new level for the type of work that was even being defined as graphic art. And I think a lot of artists started upping their game as well in reaction to that. Through the curation process, we want to start very tight initially, and then get a little looser over time, and add more styles to the curation. But at the root of it, it's given consumers a chance to reflect their dynamic global Indian identities. Whether we also don't see Culture Shop as purely Indian. Nothing's purely Indian anymore. So we like to think that we're 50% Indian and 50% global, and when these two things intermix, that's when there's some interesting conversations that come out of it. And to give somebody a way of expressing themselves without words and being proud of that, whatever's on their chest or on their wall at home, that's something pretty special, because you're tapping into their identity and their soul.
I think at an individual level, totally agree with Kunal. At a societal level, I think that you see the graphic image has the power to impact society, and it has always had that. And so in addition to the very personal artistic statements that our artists make, we also actually work sort of closely with them. Kunal's team works closely with them on certain themes that we identify, which are very sort of current and important in today's day and age. So we've done something called Urban Jungle, a theme called Urban Jungle, which is about animals in cities. We also did, we have a lot of work coming in about women's rights. We also support, the LGBTQ communities through selling their zines. And so I think at a broader level, there is a tremendous ability for graphic designers and artists to actually tap into some really important things that are going around in the world. Some of our work has touched on that, but we would like to do that in a more sort of intentional manner going forward.
But I think in India, any creative person that I've met in India has an urge to drive things forward. They want a large wave of change to happen. And if you're creative in India, it's very hard to make a large change happen. There's a lot of pushbacks and there's a lot of challenges and so on and so forth. It's an uphill battle. But only if we kind of work in a collective manner can that happen quicker.
Absolutely. How is the Indian art scene evolving? I mean, what are the challenges of regaining the Indian identity? I've been discussing and also having conversations with some of the other designers on your board. and they say that when you see a Scandinavian artwork, you understand that this is their Japanese artwork. You have this definite characteristics to each artwork, and you can identify with their geographical areas also. So India being so diverse in its overall culture and regional changes, like how is the overall Indian art scene evolving in terms of design?
The graphic art scene, I think we have a long way to go still. So the Scandinavians had a head start, if you like. And India's a complex place. With many different styles, many different traditions, many different cultures, all intermixed. So I think it's at its nascent stage, and it's starting to figure out what is that identity. But it needs conversations, it needs work to be put out and debated and evolved and so on. So I think we're at the beginning stages of it, and we're starting to identify what that is in certain cases. But there's some of the challenges we have is this idea of young designers going to trends. So whatever is the hot item on Pinterest in terms of look and style, they'll go to that first and start supplying work, which we're more interested in who they are and the work they create as opposed to just stylistic.
Just riding the wave of like whatever the trends are.
Yes. So we see a lot of that actually, and we're hoping to see more original work and more collaborations between artists, mixing up styles. And there's a lot to be taken from craft and learned from, and then work back into your design practice. And as designers, we always start analog anyway. So I think that process of not just jumping straight to the computer, but getting a bit hands-on first, and then using the computer to, I guess, push that idea forward. These are some of the things that would help that move.
I think broadly speaking, it's moving quite rapidly. I think there's a parallel sort of movement which is being undertaken by the street art folks, where they basically go for 2-3 months to Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and essentially transform part of the city. So I don't know if you've had a chance to go. You must go and see it's going on in the docks right now. In Colaba.
Street art, Mumbai.
And that is public art at the end of the day, and it has the ability to really provoke thought amongst the broader society.
Educate to a certain extent.
And to knock you out of your daily rhythm and just get you to think about things and see things a different way and appreciate things. What has been exciting in terms of what we have done is that we do feel a very new, fresh 21st century Indo-global identity is emerging through our work. There is some stylistic consistency, which I think is a hallmarks of some of the Japanese stuff and the Scandinavian or Finnish stuff, but there is still a common thread that you see. And Kunal just worked on the London Design Festival exhibition, and he can speak a little bit about this. Was where we showed a few of our works within that festival. And you can probably speak a little bit to the coherence on some of the features of this kind of identity, at least that we are producing, or the graphic artists are producing.
I think it's definitely confident and bold, and it's seeing things through a new lens that we haven't seen before, without some of the weightage of the past, and trying to express it in a way that different cultures can interact with it. And this is the beauty about graphic design. It's about communication. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. That graphic symbol goes beyond language, and it's very powerful when you get it right. I would also say our curation is now 80 artists, 700 artworks plus, and it's an ongoing discovery and documentation of this movement as it happens every day. And in 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, when you see what was the first work we curated and what's the work we're currently curating, I think that's where the answer will be. Because there's these stepping stones that are required in between.
Correct. You have to set benchmarks as to like where it is heading towards also.
And for example, if let's say a new tablet comes out and artists are using that, that's definitely going to change the type of work they create. So there's so much change happening. We need to digest it all and make sense of it, I think, along the way.
Yeah. Arjun, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, no, I'm personally very encouraged, because I think if all these are independent artists and designers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think in fashion, if you look at fashion, I think that India has expressed itself very strongly and well. In music, you have two sections. You have people who are representing Indian culture, and then some of the urban Indian musicians and DJs. I don't know if that identity is actually coming through. Conversely, in a short span of time, I feel what these Indian graphic artists, not only here but all over the world, are creating, undoubtedly has an Indian identity, which is very important to Kunal, me, and Jazz. Is as that evolves, it's not to be forced, but it is to be extracted. And we feel it's already coming through fairly loud and clear. So we are extremely excited about the journey that Kunal just talked about, and looking back 10 years and really seeing what has happened from ground zero to where we are.
Yeah, brilliant. The next thing which I wanted to ask you is, like, I can see like a lot of, in fact, the time when I started AudioGAN, I just like started exploring people in the field, in this design community and places like that. So I started a lot of people following on Instagram, and I can see a lot of movement overall happening in terms of exchanging thoughts, people putting up a lot of stories, overall artwork. So how is, like, from your insights, how well this is received in terms of pure art, or is it just a trend which is happening right now, or is there really substance to what people are putting out there and how it is received by the general people?
Hey, I mean, when did you have people showing you art every day you wake up and like streams of it? So it's a gift to people. So on the other side, as a consumer of this kind of media, it's just gifts that keep coming through your feed. It has had a tremendous impact on the recognition of artists. Artists are now being known much faster and much broader and wider than they have ever been. I think on the downside, the risk is that this just becomes a Facebook-like.
Yeah. I was, in fact, the question was slightly towards that only, because there's so much noise around with lot of junk material also, and in this entire noise, people like artists are putting up their work. So how well is it received?
It's received very well, but the question is, what does it mean? Right? Because a like doesn't convert into currency, right?
Yeah. So, and that one of our phrases is to support the artist. So if you want that artist to make work again that you're going to love, you purchase something of his, support him so that he can keep on doing what he's doing, and show some appreciation.
So we try always trying to figure out stuff. You learn something every day, but I think getting people to value that to the point that, hey, instead of like 3-4 beers, let me get something that has art on it which I can keep with myself permanently, and it's not this fleeting experience. I think becomes very important. And we continue to look for solutions to not go into that zone of it just being a Facebook-like.
Cool. The next one is actually more for Kunal, because we briefly talked about it, like things happening since you are promoting overall artwork of different artists. There has been instances of stealing art, plagiarism, overall how like some artwork or some part of the artwork is being used by someone else and promoting as their work. So can you just talk about something, how you guys are preventing from this, or like trying to minimize this?
I think a few artists have hit the nail in terms of creating iconic work. Very simple but clever graphic design, and graphic design lends itself to be reappropriated and stolen, if you like, with typefaces and minimalism. but we've been championing this with there's brands like Mantra, Jabong, and so on, where we find our work on these sites. And initially it was quite difficult to get them to realize that that is illegal, but within a small space of time we managed to build a relationship with their legal teams. So we can call them up directly when we find something out there and get it taken down or take that user down within a couple of hours. And for us, that just shows the power of how these brands are thinking differently today as well, and want to try and support the arts. The other thing we set up was we couldn't monitor everything. We just don't have that many eyes in that many places. And we threw it open to the community, because it's the community's job to set that bar as well. And so we set up Copycat, which is a Facebook group where anybody can join and anybody can highlight copyright infringement, or even have a discussion like, is this legal or isn't it legal, and throw it out there to the crowd.
Yeah, that's really nice.
But what I would say is it's different to music. In music, you had a file that was sitting on a computer, nobody knew it was there. Today, if somebody's trying to sell one of our artist stuff, you can do something as simple as a Google reverse image search, and it'll send you back stuff which looks identical or similar, which is actually what we employed when we ran into 3 or 4 problems. And so I think that's fundamentally different, and I think that the communities that Kunal talked about are very critical in this, because there is such passion amongst the artists to protect their work and to help others protect their work that anytime this actually happens, it is the artist communities that start really raising the temperature on social media. And this combination of things was not there with music. So people who have violated intellectual property essentially don't have an option but to withdraw, because the noise is getting too loud, and then next thing you have an Indian national newspaper article about. So the cost of doing that is not that low, and our job is to make that as high as possible for people.
Yeah, I think that's a great sign that people are really valuing original work also. So Kunal and Arjun, I would like to just conclude with one last question, like what's the future of art in India? I mean, with respect to like restoring, it's like a combined question of like, how are we going to restore our design identity, which is in India, which has been like built over centuries together, and now these young generation artists are coming up with their own interpretation of art, expressing their own thoughts. So like what is the future like? How does it look from a purely art standpoint, and also from a culture shop standpoint?
Well, I'd say it would be nice to see more cross-pollination between graphic artists and architects and street artists and furniture designers and so on and so forth, where these sectors have an overlap to influence each other, because I think design's a very broad case, and as we were just talking about, you add India on top of that and it becomes extremely complex. But we all need to learn from people who have gone before us, right? And pass down that wisdom as well.
Cool. Arjun, you want to like to add something to this? What's the future like? Types?
Yeah, I think in our specific area there are definitely some heroes, like I mentioned before, and Arijit Sen and people like Sarnath Banerjee, and so but this is a very urban movement, right? Certainly the kind of stuff we are doing. So I think we would like to actually create that identity, this urban identity, which you can't really point to an urban Indian visual identity, and also to document some of the stuff from the past and maybe reinterpret it in some ways.
That's beautiful. I think this is a good note to end this. So that was Kunal and Arjun with us on AudioGyan. Do log on to cultureshop.in or visit their physical store in Bandra and the newly open in Kalagoda. So, and thank you for giving us your time. It was lovely talking to you both.
And do keep an eye out for a Sketchbook Sunday session where we work with up and coming young artists and artists on the platform coming in January.
Sure. That was a nice plug. Thank you. So that's it from today's Gyan session. Stay tuned for more Gyan on AudioGyan next week. Till then, bye.